first rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club. The second rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club.
He calls himself the narrator because he never actually gives a name, and honestly, that fits him. A regular office drone whose life is measured in fluorescent light and IKEA catalogs. He's sleepless, polite, and painfully aware of how small everything in his life feels. He works a white-collar job handling product recalls by day and falls asleep in support groups at night, pretending to be whatever sick person will let him finally stop counting the minutes until morning. That habit of faking grief becomes the first strange thing that makes his life feel alive again, and it's the sort of setup that leads to trouble when someone else starts handing him answers. At one of those groups, he meets Marla Singer, a chaotic, cigarette-smoking mess who shows up to the same meetings he does, like a mirror of his fakery, with less of the apology and more of the scars. She's abrasive, darkly funny, and pulls a thread through his life he didn't know was there. Around the same time, after an explosive and utterly pointless apartment fire leaves him homeless, he meets Tyler Durden on a cross-country flight. Tyler is everything the narrator isn't: charismatic, anarchic, and impossibly free. He makes soap in the city. He hates the modern world's comforts, and he can say mean things in such a way that they sound like medicine. Tyler and the narrator become roommates for a while in a rundown house that could be the poster child for urban decay. They spend days drinking whiskey, making crude jokes, and watching each other's reactions to the world. But the real turning point is when they start hitting each other, literally. What begins as a crude way to snap the narrator out of his numbness to reconnect him with pain and therefore reality becomes something more. They start Fight Club. Two men at a time in basements and parking lots, beating the crap out of each other until the pain turns into some kind of ritual cleansing. The rules are simple and repeated with ritual gravity. The first rule is you don't talk about Fight Club. The second rule is you don't talk about Fight Club. It's stupid, it's primal, and it's addictive. Fight Club grows fast. What starts with a handful of guys, bored, hollow, lonely men looking for a way to feel anything, turns into a nationwide movement of basements, bruises, and brotherhood. Tyler becomes the leader and prophet, preaching disillusionment with consumer culture and a return to something raw. He criticizes the way people think their identity is defined by what they own: the sofa, the coffee table, the brand name clothes. He insults IKEA like it's a rival deity. It's funny, but it's also dangerously persuasive. Men begin to come for the fighting, but they stay for the camaraderie and the rituals Tyler offers, and Tyler, being charming and scary, seizes the moment. Marla is the gravity pulling the narrator back to personal truth, and confusingly, the focal point for Tyler's affection. For a while, the three of them orbit each other in a messy triangle. The narrator is jealous and insecure, Tyler is possessive and theatrical in his own way, and Marla carries her scars like a second skin. There are violent, funny, and tender moments. The film can be blackly comedic one moment and painfully sincere the next, but underlying all of it is a growing tension about control. Tyler wants to burn it all down, literally and figuratively, and he has a following now that will do pretty much anything he asks. As Fight Club morphs into Project Mayhem, the stakes escalate. What began as cathartic hand-to-hand combat becomes organized sabotage. Members stop being individuals and start being soldiers assigned numbers and duties. Tyler orders pranks and acts of vandalism, soap and prisons, smashing corporate symbols, and the group follows. That's the eerie part. Men who came to feel alive through pain now follow a leader whose ideas grow darker and less principled. The narrator begins to notice things that make him uncomfortable, like the cult-like rituals and the willingness to hurt bystanders. He tries to stop it, to inject reason, but Tyler's charisma is magnetic, and the movement is a vessel that swallows dissent. An important dead end turns into heartbreak with the death of Robert "Bob" Paulson, a big man who once attended support groups with the narrator and later becomes one of Tyler's loyal members. Bob's death in a botched mission is handled with strange, almost comedic bluntness at first. The group grieves him by chanting his name again and again. But for the narrator, it's a devastating wake-up call. He sees what Tyler's movement can do to people, strip them of their identity, make them instruments. That's where the fear starts to crowd out fascination. Throughout all this, the narrator tries to assert control. He wants to expose Tyler, stop Project Mayhem, and protect Marla, whom he still loves in his own complicated, diminished way. He attempts to report Tyler's actions to his boss, to the authorities, and even to the police, but those attempts fail or are misinterpreted. That frustration spirals. In an earnest moment of trying to reclaim reality, the narrator sets his apartment on fire to break away from possessions and clarity, only to find that Tyler has already burned it down, and that Tyler is everywhere. Tyler is on billboards, in slogans, in the men who chant. Here comes the film's big twist, the one that flips everything and forces a total reevaluation. The narrator realizes Tyler Durden is not an external savior, but a split personality. Tyler is everything he's suppressed: his aggression, his contempt for corporate life, his fevered desire to destroy the comforts that numb him. The violent, charismatic icon who formed Fight Club is in fact the narrator's own alter ego, a product of his insomnia and need for meaning. Once that sinks in, every scene reads differently. The fights, the pranks, the leadership, all orchestrated by one person with two faces. It's a terrifying, fascinating revelation because it makes him both perpetrator and victim. The moral and emotional core of the movie sharpens here. The narrator tries desperately to stop the organization he unknowingly built. He learns that Project Mayhem has planted bombs meant to erase debt by destroying buildings that house credit data, a plan to reset economic order through violence. He races to stop them, to save people he once encouraged to lose their names and their wills. He struggles to tell Marla the truth, to keep her safe, and to take responsibility for the blood on his hands. One of the most intense sequences follows. The narrator confronts Tyler in a high-rise with a room of explosives and vows to stop the countdown. The two of them, really two sides of the same man, argue and grapple, and the narrator resorts to extreme measures. In a desperate attempt to end Tyler's control, he shoots himself. It's not a cinematic suicide, so much as a violent purge. The bullet passes through his cheek and misses his brain, but the act is symbolic and literal. He's trying to kill the part of himself that created all this chaos. Tyler fades as he collapses into the shadows, and the narrator, bleeding but alive, realizes he's free, at least momentarily, from that domineering split personality. The ending is haunting. As the narrator and Marla stand hand in hand, the buildings Tyler targeted begin to implode in a coordinated demolition that shakes the city. There's a surreal calm as the two watch the skyline fall apart, the soundtrack playing something cold and inevitability tinged into it, and you're left wondering whether the destruction is liberation or merely another kind of loss. Fight Club is more than just a story about underground boxing and anarchic plots. It's an exploration of identity, masculinity, and the hollow promises of consumer culture. The narrator is desperate for meaning in a world that offers him cozy distractions and clean furniture, and Tyler is the monstrous answer he gives himself. Marla is messy truth. She's addiction, love, and authenticity all tangled together. The men who follow Tyler are searching for purpose and finding it in destruction, which raises uncomfortable questions about how people seek meaning and what they'll do when they don't find it in ordinary life. There are moments in the film that are darkly funny, a little absurd, and strangely poignant. The soap-making business is a perfect metaphor. Tyler literally manufactures a product out of cast-off fat, something society discards, and sells it back as luxury. It's brilliant and gross, and fits the movie's logic: corruption and commodity, packaged as cleanliness. The film's humor often comes from deadpan lines and grotesque images. It's not a happy laugh. It's the kind of chuckle that comes with the recognition that the joke might be on all of us.
Pacing-wise, the movie moves from sardonic comedy to blistering critique. Scenes like the first brutal fight, where the narrator learns the joy of disconnection from pain, are played for shock and insight. Scenes in the basement are sweaty and ritualistic. Scenes with Tyler are charismatic and unsettling. The quiet moments, the ones with the narrator alone, talking to himself and to the audience, are where the real ache is. You feel how tired he is, how desperate for a real sensation, and how easy it is to be seduced by extremism when existential boredom gets too loud.